This weekend, in the weekend preview, our focus shifts to Parx, to Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Parx has the $1 million Pennsylvania Derby and the $1 million Cotillion for 3-year-old males and 3-year-old fillies, respectively. Very, very nice field in the Pennsylvania Derby. 11 horses, which you would expect for $1 million, but it's not always what we get. I feel like we usually get 7 or 8 horses. You know, and other than Epicenter, I don't know who else you could ask for in this field. We've got Taba, who's the slight favorite at 5-2 on the morning line. We've got Zandon breaking from the rail. It's a new rider in Joel Rosario. We've got Cyberknife, who's 3-1, second choice, breaking the middle, close to the middle of the pack in the 5-hole. He's, you know, Epicenter you would think is the slam dunk 3-year-old champion right now. Cyberknife is the only other one that I think has a chance if he wins this race and then somehow wins the Classic. Obviously, it's probably not going to happen. But even like some of the lesser horses that you haven't really heard from in a while, Simplification was a nice horse early on the Derby Trail this year. White Barrio's in there. B-Talk is an interesting little long shot for Doug O'Neill. Skippy Longstocking, We the People, Tawnyport. I mean, these are some nice horses. Like this isn't like the B team of the 3-year-old division. Who you know, it's early, but who are you guys interested in the Pennsylvania Derby?
Joe, I mean, I think Taba would be the horse you'd have to look at because, and again, I reserve the right to change my mind. I haven't done a deep dive into the race, but I think with him, I still don't think we've seen his best. I mean, he was rushed into the Kentucky Derby in his 3rd lifetime start after winning the Santa Anita Derby. That didn't go well. Then came back off a layoff and, you know, ran well in the Haskell, but I would expect that he would probably run a little bit better in this race. And, you know, shout out to Parx here. And, you know, they've come up with like you said, a really good, really deep race. To think you have the Bluegrass winner, the Arkansas Derby winner, the Haskell winner, the Santa Anita Derby winner, and the Florida Derby winner, not to mention, you know, horses that have won like the Fountain of Youth, West Virginia Derby, and some other lesser races. But I'll give you one scenario to consider. If Cyberknife wins this race and Epicenter doesn't win the Breeders' Cup Classic, which considering Flightline, you know, looks like that very well could be the case. Epicenter would have 1 Grade 1 win on the year and Cyberknife would have 3. I'm trying to think, would that be it? Even though I know in my heart that Epicenter is the better horse of the two, that's that's a big statement there. 3 Grade 1s versus 1. I think you could make a case that Cyberknife could be the 3-year-old champion. Now, if one of the other wins the Breeders' Cup Classic, all big ifs, that's going to settle everything out. But, you know, it's a really good race in here. But right now I'd be a Taba guy, you know, not giving you any great insights in there. He is going to be the favorite in the race. And, you know, back in the Bob Baffert barn, as we talked last week, you know, Baffert coming back from the suspension and everything is rolling, just great gun for him. So he's won the race 3 times. Zito and Nick Zito and Woody Stevens have also won it 3. So he would add this as still another race where he has the most wins ever in the career. But, you know, it's just without Epicenter, you don't have that big star in the race. But, you know, things we ask for, competitive racing, big fields, a lot of good horses. It checks all the boxes except maybe the star power one with Epicenter being, and I'm not saying these horses aren't good horses or stars or anything, but Epicenter being the main star in the division. You know, it's going to be a fun race. They've done a great job positioning this on the calendar. You know, after the Triple Crown, you have the other 3 races, kind of a second, you know, go of the 3-race series, Haskell, Travers, and of course, the Pennsylvania Derby. Cyberknife running in all 3. You know how I love it when guys actually run their horses. So good for you. Good on you, Brad Cox. We'll see what happens on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to this race.
Yeah, 6 horses in this race were in the Kentucky Derby. Another one, Skippy Longstocking, was in the Preakness and the Belmont. And another one, We the People, was one of the favorites in the Belmont Stakes. So, I mean, you're talking about a really good bunch here. And Bill, I agree with your assessment that Taba is the horse to beat. I think the line maker got it right at 5-2. Look, he was beaten ahead by Cyberknife in the Haskell, but he was the best horse that day.
Right.
He had an outside trip, whereas Cyberknife got through on the rail every step of the way. And still, he was only beaten by a head. And if you recall that race, Taba, in the running of the Haskell, sort of took about 1/8 of a mile off when they got to the half-mile pole and started dropping back.
That's right,
yeah. Completely dead. And then, you know, sort of picked it up again and picked up the bit and charged back up again. So he ran kind of a spotty race and still almost won. With Zandon on the rail, I actually think Cyberknife is a good favorite to try to beat. in your exotics, or a good second choice in this case at 3-1 to try to beat. Simply because 2 races back when he won the Haskell, he got that inside trip I'm talking about. Last time in the Travers, when he was second to Epicenter, he broke from post number 1, and Florent Giroux wisely used his speed. He set an uncontested pace in relatively modest fractions for a race like the Travers. And so he had an advantageous trip in both of his last 2 races. And now Zandon's going to save ground from the rail. So for me, I think Zandon and Taiba, I think it's going to come down to one of those 2.
You know, just to the point about the 3-year-old championship, you know, I think if it hadn't been such a resounding defeat in the Travers, you know, Epicenter was so clearly best. I think Cyberknife would have a little bit better of a case. But it is interesting, you know, maybe he goes in here and wins this race and then goes in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile and avoids Flightline and wins that race. Then you got 4 Grade 1. Now, we're obviously jumping ahead here, but if he had 4 Grade 1s and the Epicenter loses to Flightline in the Classic, then I think you have an interesting scenario where there's more of a reasonable debate. But yeah, we'll know more about after Saturday. But yeah, that was my main takeaway from this race, is that Cyberknife is the only one. He's the only one who has a chance to dethrone Epicenter right now. But it starts with winning on Saturday. It's going to be a terrific race. It'll be interesting to see how the pace shakes out. And the Cotillion's a pretty interesting race, which we're going to talk about after this break. From Three Chimneys, Gunrunner has had $5 million yearlings sell so far at Keeneland in September, which is remarkable. He has a big weekend of racing coming up. You know, as we talked about, Taiba and Cyberknife, both by Gunrunner. They're going head-to-head again in the Pennsylvania Derby. Plus, Steve Asmussen Trainee Society is in the Cotillion. And then Runnin' Son of a Gun is in the Grade 2 Gallant Bob Stakes. Also going to be some yearlings by Sharp Ass Tekka, who has 19 winners now. He has some yearlings at Keeneland in September. This week on Tuesday, the very first horse to go through the ring was one of the top lots of the day. The colt was bred by Steve Cawthon's Dreamfields Farm, sold for $250,000. Sharp Ass Tekka is the best value you can get right now with the start that he's gotten off to, because that stud fee is only going to go up and up if he continues his success. So we'll be right back after this message from Three Chimneys.
Here comes Taiba. Taiba in the center of the track with good-looking strides, squares off with Cyberknife. Cyberknife takes the lead. Taiba going with him. These two in a thriller. Cyberknife just in front, and Cyberknife has won the TVG.com Haskell over Taiba. Jack Christopher finished third. The running time 1 minute 46.24 seconds.
Come dream with us at Three Chimneys.
As I said, not only 1 but $2 million Grade 1 races, restricted Grade 1 races this Saturday at Parx. We also have the Grade 1 Cotillion Stakes. That's going to be run at 5:20. Pennsylvania Derby will run at 6:10 Eastern Time. Pretty nice field in the Cotillion as well. We've got 9 horses, as I mentioned. Society for Steve Asmussen, the Gunrunner filly, won by 6 3/4 lengths in the Charlestown Oaks last time out. The local hope, or at least local in terms of where she ran last time out, Green Up, who's a very nice horse for Team Valor and Todd Pletcher, won the Catherine Sophia Stakes, which is the prep for the Cotillion at Parx, by 3 3/4 lengths. We also have Adair Manor, who was a top Kentucky Oaks contender earlier this year. She was second in the Black Eyed Susan when we saw her last. Goddess of Fire, who's been a nice little horse for Todd Pletcher. Gerrymander, who won the Grade 2 Mother Goose earlier this year. Shahama, who won the Monmouth Oaks last time out. So a pretty good field. But for me, the takeaway, or at least what I would have liked to see, is Moira. We've talked about Moira potentially running in this race after the Queen's Plate because she went off of the Triple Crown Trail in Canada. I thought this was the race they were pointing to. Wonder where she's going to go next. Maybe you guys have a little bit of insight, but it's a nice field. But if Moira was in the race, to me, that would have been an appointment viewing. What do you guys think?
Joe, as you mentioned that, I texted Kevin Attard today. Where are you going with Moira now that the Cotillion is obviously out? It's either the E.P. Taylor or the Queen Elizabeth II. She's going to work this weekend. But he says, I want to wait to see the noms come out for the races. And I'm wondering if he's reading between the lines. I'm going wherever Charlie Appleby isn't going. Could be the case. But yeah, she's terrific. I would have loved to have seen her in this race. You know, I grew up in Philadelphia, right in Center City, Philadelphia. And this was my racetrack that I was raised on, going with my dad. I go back to the days, not when it was just called Philadelphia Park, it was called Keystone. Randy will remember that, of course. It was Keystone Racetrack. So I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart. From another very good race. Again, you're only missing the number 1 horse. You're missing Nest. no surprise at all that she's not in there after running.
Yeah, did I not even mention Secret Oath? My bad.
That's right. You did. Well, I was going to get to that. Secret Oath, is the logical favorite in here in the headliner. There's something about her, though, and I can't really put my hands around it. I'm going to try to beat her. I mean, I know that she got beaten by Nest, who was just tremendous, but she got drubbed in her last 2 races, albeit by a very good horse. But I just think, maybe she's not at the top of her game right now. If she had looked Nest in the eye and lost by a half a length in those races, she'd be like 3-5 in here and say, well, she's, how can she lose this race? Green Up to me is really interesting. She's a horse that really stepped up last time out in the prep for this, the Catherine Sophia. Now she ran a 100 buyer number, Randy? I'm looking at my PPs here. Yeah. I guess the question would be, might she bounce off that? But I rather think that she's a horse that just took a while to get good for Todd Pletcher. Todd Pletcher, obviously, he can keep a horse going as well as anybody in the race. So again, 96 hours out or whatever it is, she would be my pick. Reserve the right to change my mind. But I think from a handicapping standpoint, you have to try to beat Secret Oath in there. Not that she's going to be 3-5 or anything. The race is too deep for that. I think she'll be more in the line of 2-1, 5-2, something like that. But right now I'll put Green Up on top. But again, very good, very deep race. It's giving the horse players and the racing fan what they want, a competitive race with a big field. Can't wait for the Cotillion either.
Yeah, the resounding losses that Secret Oath had to Nest don't bother me that much in themselves, because I think we saw in the Arkansas Derby, we saw in the Preakness, and we saw in those 2 races with Nest, that to me at least, Secret Oath doesn't look like the kind of filly that really relishes a dogfight. It's like when she's running against horses that she can beat, then she looks like a world beater. And when she's running against horses that she knows she can't beat, when it comes right down to it, she might kind of check out a little bit. What bothers me the most about Secret Oath, and I can't believe I'm saying this because, this kind of goes against everything I believe, but this is her 10th start so far this year. And in the context,
poor horse. Call in PETA. My goodness.
Poor horse. In the context of the way horses are trained in 2022, that's a lot of action for Secret Oath. And we just saw another 3-year-old in the Lucas Barn. And Wayne, he's not shy about running his horses, as we know. Ethereal Road, who really was being run a lot and really began to show a downturn in his last couple on turf. So that is the primary reason I would be willing to take a shot against Secret Oath. And I think you zeroed in on exactly the right horse. And here's why. Adair Manor, you got the Bob Baffert factor, right? Adair Manor is the 2nd favorite in the race at odds of 7-2, coming back off a 2nd place finish in the Black Eyed Susan. The horse that beat her in the Up and Up in the Black Eyed Susan was a horse called Interstate Daydream. Interstate Daydream came after that, was shipped to Horseshoe, Indianapolis, and won the Indiana Oaks and won it impressively in another fast figure. And then she went to the Catherine Sophia, the prep race at Parx, and she was the 1-2 favorite against Green Up. And Green Up absolutely beat her fair and square. She came around her, the outside around the turn. She just darted away from her at the top of the stretch. Green Up has now won 4 races in a row by open lengths. She has that good buyer speed figure you pointed out last time of 100. Now, this is a filly that's very blue collar. She was only a $10,000 yearling by upstart out of a 2-punch mare. So she's, she's not a lot in that department. But my gosh, on the racetrack right now for Todd Pletcher, she is really looking like a potential star in the division. Not a Nest star, but I think good enough to win the Cotillion at 6-1 in the program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get that. For that 100 buyer and then the Todd Pletcher factor, Barry Irwin's probably going to put a big chunk of money on her too. I suspect she's going to be more in the 3-1, 7-2 range. But you guys were talking about the full field, and they really have done a great job with this card at Parx, not only putting it in the right spot on the calendar, but you've got 6 stakes. The last 6 races on the card are all stakes races. 5 of them are graded. You've got the Greenwood Cup has 9 horses. The Turf Monster has 12. The Gallant Bob has 14. The Cotillion has 9. The Pennsylvania Derby has 11. And the Alphabet Soup Handicap is the last race of the day, has another 10 horses. So, we complain a lot about short fields on big days in racing. This is not one of those circumstances. Definitely the Parx Racing office and the people in Pennsylvania racing deserve your business this Saturday. It's going to be a great, great card. Elsewhere on the calendar, not too much else going on. We have the Athenia at the Belmont at the Big A, which is a Grade 3. A couple stakes races at Churchill, including the Grade 3 Dogwood. On Sunday, we've got the Gallant Bloom at Belmont at the Big A. And shout out to Remington Park. They have the Oklahoma Derby and the Remington Park Oaks, which are both Grade 3s this Sunday night. But yeah, most eyes will be on Parx, and it's a great betting sequence, so get involved for sure.